Yeah, so 2020 laid waste to many a thing, and it was very stressful
Uh,
for many a person. And
yeah.
what impresses me, Brian, is that amidst all the chaos and confusion, you seem to have carved out a niche for yourself where you have never-ending inspiration. Because I see what you're doing over there. You're making your videos, you're making your art, and when I watch your videos and I look at your art, it has to come from a place of joy, so it seems. So I wonder, what is it that is musing you along these days? What's your inspiration?
Uh, I mean, I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I do feel, you know, I guess proud that I've been able to keep up a fair amount of momentum, and I feel like I've um, grown and I've evolved and expanded kind of what I was doing, and a friend of mine posted on their Facebook that, like, they were just talking about the about conspiracy theorists, and like one of the aspects of conspiracy theorists that make them drawn into them is that people look for a sense of community, and the person who posted this was like, I don't really share that. Like, I don't want to get too close to a lot of people, so maybe that's why I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like,
Hmm.
they're basically a semi antisocial person. They're not like completely like a hermit or anything, but like when it gets too close, um, they feel like it's social overload, and they're, I mean, basically it boiled down to, because like there was a lot of back and forth with a bunch of people talking, but basically they're an introvert, to a
Mm-hmm.
certain extent, and they thrive not being too social. And I think that I'm a similar person. Um, it's really weird because I think a lot of people that know me casually think I'm an extrovert, uh, and and if you like kind of look at how many acquaintances I have, it seems like I have a million friends. But I mean, if you really analyze all of those relationships, I have really like kind of shallow relationships with lots and lots of people. But I don't have deep relationships with that many. So like for me, I think I'm similar to my friend who posted that post, where I kind of am okay not being like, I mean, I'm in a completely different situation than from most people during pandemic, because, and maybe you have a somewhat similar situation, but like for me, I don't have a single friend in anywhere near me physically, like at all. Um, my husband has some coworkers that we are somewhat social with, but I mean, even at this point, like I don't remember the last time we saw any of them, like
Mm-hmm.
socially. So, like for me, I'm like, I don't really have any other choice but to like find my own activities, find my own ways of feeling, um, sort of like, I don't know, my own ways of finding joy, right? I'm not like able to reach out to, I mean, like, I guess, sometimes I think I am able to reach out to people. I just don't. I don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very weird thing with me. But anyway, I guess going back to your question, I think that part of me has, since being an expat and being kind of in this situation where I don't have a lot of social interaction, I sort of am forced to like find my own like path that kind of gives me my own motivation, and I think a lot of it at this point is momentum. Like, if I stop doing what I'm going to do, what I've been doing, I don't know what I would do. I would probably just like, yeah, spiral out of like into depression or something. So, part of it is if I stop, I'm afraid of what will happen. So, I mean, it's not really the the most positive answer, but it's probably the most truthful.
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty on that. And I think, you say about the socializing that most people think of you as an extrovert. And I too had kind of that impression. But I think that's because I only really engage with you when you're doing something that is creative for the most part,
Mm.
dancing, podcasting, art, whatever it might be. And I think in
Oh,
those
yeah.
times, you appear as an extrovert, but you're really not necessarily being an extrovert. It just seems so.
Yeah. I mean, like, if I'm at a party, I'm like the quietest person at a party. I almost talk to no one. And I equate this to high school basically. Like, I can't even think of the number of parties I went to in high school where like most of our peer group where they're like having parties every week and whatever. Like, I didn't go to any of those. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't gain that skill of like going to a party and like just chit chatting with people, and I never got it through college. I mean, occasionally I went to parties as an adult, but even then I was just like not that comfortable at them. So I think, yeah, it's like you say, if there's like a sort of an activity or like a point of focus to my interactions, I'm like very, I could talk a lot and like engage. But if it's just like free form, like chit chat social, I'm like no good at it.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you know, yeah.
The
Like
party
I love
question.
escape rooms or like things like that because there's like this activity and you're sort of socially interacting with other people on that because you're like doing teamwork and communicating, but you're not really like, you know, how was your day or what have you been up to? That's like not,
Mm-hmm. And I think the party thing often is, fueled by a bit of the alcohol. And I don't think I've ever seen you drunk, so I have to ask, do you drink?
I do, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, when we were younger, I didn't like have my first like sip of alcohol until I was 21,
Wow.
and and uh, and I've had like various like levels of drinking. Like the first time I drank alcohol was because I was working at Crowbar in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, when you're a bartender or a waiter at a bar, I was a waiter at the time. Like the clientele, this was in the 90s. I don't think it's still this way, but it might be. But the clientele would buy you a shot, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't drink, you were not only like saying no to a customer who was like trying to reach out and be friendly and like trying to connect, but you're also losing a tip on that drink because usually people tip like $1 per drink. So if
Right.
someone wants to buy you a shot and so you're each doing one, that's $2 extra versus like if you say no, then they probably won't do it either, and then you miss $2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so basically I learned to drink because I was working in a bar and I needed to drink in order to get the extra tips. And that was the only time I drank. Like in my early 20s, I only drank when I was working, which is like the opposite of what everyone else did, right? And
Totally.
I only drank shots. I never like drank beer or wine or anything. And then so like my evolution of drinking was totally the reverse of most people. Like most people start like drinking beer because it's cheap and not too strong, and like they go to harder stuff. I went from shots, and then I started drinking cocktails, and then I started drinking beer and wine.
That's
But
funny.
yeah,
It totally
so
sounds
to
like
answer your question,
like
oh,
the
go ahead, go ahead.
backstory of how you became an alcoholic, but minus you're not an alcoholic. So, how did you not slip and slide into alcoholism or something like that? Because it seemed like you were doing it with motivation for work, for tips, and so forth, but maybe not calculating for the fact that it's an addictive substance as well. And maybe you never got in that trap, though, huh?
I mean, I guess at certain times in my life, it might have been arguable that I had some problem.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know this, but my father was an alcoholic.
Oh,
So
no, I didn't.
I think that's part of the reason why I didn't drink until I was older, is because I had a healthy dose of fear of alcohol. And I think that's sort of like been in the back of my mind my whole adult life, is like I have like a little concern that I could have an addictive personality towards alcohol, but it's never really turned out to be the case. Like, I never, like, almost never will just have a drink sitting at home by myself. Like, I mean, every once in a while I'll do that, but like it'll be like one. Like, and I never like drink just to keep drinking until I can't remember things or anything like that. Uh, there was a certain time in my 20s probably where I drank like too much. But again, it was like, it was that you're that age and like you're just wild and you do things to excess. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, I don't ever feel like I got to the point where it was like a problem. Um, but I think part of it was because I didn't want to become like my father, and but I do think that it's like I think that there are certain people that can't control it, and I feel like I could. So I think whatever the gene is or the disease is something that skipped me. At least I think. I don't know.
Hmm. Interesting backstory about your alcohol history. I had no idea that you had ever
Yeah.
drank, so that's funny that you started at work. I started with a bottle of Mad Dog 2020. My sister's friends came over on a New Year's Eve, and I was young. I mean, I think I was 13, 14, and it
Wow.
tasted like candy, and I got so over the top drunk where my face was purple, and I didn't make it to New Year's, and I vomited 100 times. And that really kind of just put the line in the sand. Like, I don't ever want to feel like that again,
Uh
you
huh.
know?
Uh huh.
So I just never
Yeah.
went that far with it. And it's just nothing
Uh,
that really even attracts me. I don't know the flavor, the taste. I don't know the feeling. It's not such a big deal for me. Um,
yeah.
but wondering about your social status there. So it doesn't bother you that you're there alone without friends in Vietnam. It's something that you can work with. So there's no
So
negative there.
no, I would definitely say that I would prefer to have some friends and some social, world.
Hmm.
It's just there's not a big pool here, and I don't really have a choice. Uh, it's just the nature of where we're living, and there are some other expats around this area, but it's just not. I think it has a little bit to do with our age too, because like the people that we know are either much younger or older enough that they're just not in our age group either. Like they're just like kind of they're not as far as away as I'd like them to be, but they feel too old for us, if that makes sense.
It does.
Um, I mean, and so like, and a lot of the people that are around here are like young straight men who are like into drinking a lot and not really a lot else, and we just don't really have anything in common with them. So they're nice. They're a lot of them are nice people. It's just we just don't have any like connection to them.
Hmm.
So when I was in Shanghai, I like met a lot of like interesting, cool people of all different ages, and I think part of it was just that there were just a lot of foreigners living in Shanghai, and also the the way the community came together, it was just really supportive, and where we're at, it's just too small to like really make that happen here. I feel like if we lived in Ho Chi Minh, it would be different. We'd probably be meeting a lot of people, but we just don't get there often enough to um, like see people more than once in a random location or anything like that. It's just like I don't know. As you know, I'm not like very extroverted, so I'm not really good at making spontaneous friends or like chatting people up. So in Shanghai, it was just convenient because there was this app called WeChat, which is like their overarching social media, which everyone used. And the nice thing about it was they had groups, like sort of like Facebook groups. They had a group for everything, and the groups could only be, I think it was like 500 people or less. So they were very specific groups, like people who were into art had a group, people who were into remaking furniture had a group, people who were into music had groups, and so like you could just like kind of get on these like WeChat groups and sort of get to know people, and then like you'd hear about events happening, and then everyone that showed up at these events all were on the same group, so you kind of like start to get to know people that way, and it's just not as cohesive, I feel like here, as it was there.
Mm-hmm. And you could potentially meet up with some of these beloved people that are in your heart, but obviously due to the COVID, you can't jump on a plane. But if you could, would you? Like, is that something you're wishing was available to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, for sure, I wish we could travel. I mean, I would definitely go back and visit friends in Shanghai. I have friends in Hong Kong. So, like, there are places nearby relatively that I would go visit for sure. And I would like to go back to the United States eventually and, like, see my friends back there. We were going once or twice a year up until the pandemic, and now we just haven't been since that started.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the longer I'm an expat, the more sort of diverse my um, like geographically diverse my friends become. So like now I have friends in Europe and like Australia and New Zealand that like I can go visit if I want, but you know we can't travel. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I would say like 80% of the reason why we're even here is because my husband loves to travel. So like we do travel a lot when it's allowed,
Mm-hmm.
and so uh, but yeah, and I mean when I travel, I like to go places where I know people. When he travels, he likes to go places that are just exotic that he's never seen before. So usually we try and do both. Like hopefully we'll know someone, but yeah, sometimes we just go somewhere because it's new.
That's nice. Often people travel for the holidays, Christmas, New Year's. I do. My family does. We're always doing that. But this year, obviously, it was different. We stayed home. And I don't know about you, but for me, it was wonderful. It felt like the 1980s. Like, I felt like I was there with the Christmas tree and the snacks and opening up Nintendo. And I kind of lived vicariously through my son and felt that vibe. There was no agenda, there was no rush, there was no phoning, there was nothing to do with anybody outside of our little bubble. So for me, it was
Uh,
like a miracle on 34th Street. What was it like for you?
mm.
Did you enjoy the holidays this year with the whole lockdown scenario?
Well, I mean, we weren't as locked down. I mean, in Vietnam, COVID is like not really too bad at all.
Hmm.
People can freely travel within Vietnam. Like in large places, you have to wear a mask, but other than that, um, travel's pretty free. So we went to Hanoi and we went on a cruise in the Ha Long Bay for Christmas,
Ah,
and it was really nice. And I mean, I think we arrived to Hanoi on Christmas Eve. Like we actually traveled Christmas Eve, maybe the day before. Um, so I mean, like for us, it was like not really. It was barely Christmas, I would say. You know, I think we
hmm.
went out to a nice restaurant, but it wasn't like we had like turkey or some sort of traditional Thanksgiving or Christmas type meal. We just like had a nice meal because, you know, it, it wasn't like feeling very Christmassy. I mean, uh, I think things are different when you're, like a traditional family, right? Like you have like a
Papa.
kid
Yeah.
and you like, yeah. I mean, we exchange small gifts, but because like we're also in a situation where my husband makes most of the money, I make some money from art, but like we don't really have a lot of money, so we agreed not to really buy gifts, and like so we didn't really even have that to do. Yeah, so I don't know. Uh, for me, I didn't miss it that much, but um, I will say, like, on like one day just before Christmas, I watched Charlie Brown Christmas, and I like got very emotional just watching that. Do you have to get that?
No, actually, my wife's home. She's working from home, COVID style. Yeah, home
Uh,
office. That's why I'm not in the kitchen today. I'm in the
ah,
living room here with Sherlock Hemlock over there.
I almost I like you could see on the ground these
The,
pictures, sort
the
of
tippy
like.
tops, yeah. Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
I was just about to hang those when you called.
Ah,
So unfortunately, I didn't get them up in time.
next time around.
Yeah.
Man, your work is really pretty, honestly. This picture that you put on Facebook with what looks like a blue swan kind of a figure with your
Oh yeah.
geometric patterns over it. Wow,
Mhm.
that needs to be like blown up and on the side of a building or something, you know? Like this is the kind of
Thanks.
art that to me inspires. It's colorful. It has this open end to it where you can, as a uh, an individual looking at it, can think what they will, and it's just
Yeah.
nice. It's just
Thank
nice,
you.
and I like
Thanks.
things that are just nice. You don't have to go all the way out there and stretch people's imaginations to the brink, or be horrific and
Yeah.
gotcha moments with art, stuff like that. Like I saw some meme on, I think it was Twitter. It was like art in 19 blah 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 and art in 2014, and it was the 2014 image was this enormous butt plug that was installed in front of some old building somewhere. I don't know. And while that's simplistic and has color as well, it was a big green butt plug. Um, I don't know. I can't say it's just nice. It invokes something. It makes you feel a certain
Yeah.
way. Maybe it makes you feel funny, dirty, hysterical, whatever. But your
Yeah.
stuff is just nice. Like just pad a room with it, pad an office, a hotel, a restaurant, whatever it is, and it kind of suits every single space in a sense. I don't know.
Thanks.
And you're
Yeah.
not giving up anytime soon, so that's awesome as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the dream is being able to get some work where I get into some, like banks or hotels or something like that. Um, yeah, I just keep hoping that that'll happen. Which reminds me, like I have been approached by this one art consulting company on two occasions, and the first time they, they approached me and they said they had this project going on in Hoi An, Vietnam, actually, and they liked some work for it, and then they just like stopped communicating. So I kind of got a sour taste from them, and uh, someone else from the company then contacted me again and was like, "Oh, hey, do you want to be in our database? Just like fill out this form, and like that way, if your work seems like it's good for us, we'll contact you." And I just like was like, "You guys already like pulled my strings once. I just don't feel like it. But really, I should just do it because it won't take very long to like do what they're asking for, and it could lead somewhere." Um, yeah. Anyway,
The more the
now
better,
that
man. Yeah,
yeah.
please.
I mean,
Every
I've
opportunity,
had
spread
a
it.
number of almost situations where that happened, but they fall through, and it's kind of I really wish that I like when it falls through that I could get some feedback, like what happened. Was it they
Hmm.
just picked someone else? Was it, like the client, like it was down to me and someone else and they picked the other thing? Like that would make me at least feel like, oh, I was close and it was just like some aesthetic, thing or so. But yeah, anyway, that's one of the challenges of being an artist is like you just gotta focus on making work and getting it out there, and you can't really get too, um, you know, caught up in worrying about what's going to happen. You just gotta just keep trying, I guess. I don't know.
100% agree. And for me, I feel like I'm enjoying your videos most of all because it's not just your work, but it's you.
Mhm.
And, of course, I'm a big fan. But what I really like, and I've mentioned it in a couple of the video comments, is that it has a John Hughes kind of feel to me. Now, I don't know if that's because we went to high school together, early 90s, which felt very John Hughes esque just being in high school in the early 90s, or
Andrew
if it
High School.
really has a John Hughes feel. I can't really tell. So, what is it for you? Are you at
I'm
all
definitely.
inspired by that kind of
I
genre? That
mean, if that's happening, it's entirely subconsciously. Like I'm not intentionally, going for a John Hughes aesthetic or anything like that. But I mean, those are some of my favorite films from, like being younger. I mean, I haven't seen one in a while, but like, I mean, I basically know all the words to The Breakfast Club,
mm,
um, and so, but I don't know. I feel like what I'm doing when I make my videos is entirely um, just instinctual. Like I'm not really patterning myself around anyone, which is the same thing that is what my work is like. I don't really like I don't know anyone who makes art like I do. When you were talking about like other artists and stuff like that, I mean, I've always kind of felt that I didn't really fit in with art, most of my contemporary like friends that I've made over the years. It's like there are so many artists that make cute things or like dark things or like street art type things, and I just don't relate to that at all. So I just make what I feel is like what I want to make. And I
mm-hmm.
think that's the same thing that I'm doing with YouTube. It's like I mean, prior to making my own content, I did not really watch any YouTube videos. I didn't follow any creators. But because I wanted to sort of like know how like what other people are doing, I started following them, and now I watch quite a few, and um, I'm sure I'm absorbing some of that, but like it's pretty rare where I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do that thing,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it does. I mean, I would definitely say sometimes that happens where it's like, oh, I really like their approach to this or whatever, and so I'll make a point of like trying to incorporate that. But some things, like some things seem like a good idea, and then you actually do it, and you're like, oh, I don't really feel like that worked, so you don't do it again or whatever. I would say that the biggest thing for me that I like here, my process is this. I film, and filming is super easy and fast and fun. All of the process work and all of like the environmental stuff, like all the B-roll kind of like Vietnam stuff, like all that's super easy. And then I accumulate it, and then I'm like, oh, now I have to edit. And editing is not too bad, but usually what I do is I rough cut edit until I have it like basically all lined out. And then I'm like, all right, now I need to sort of put my voice on it. So either it's me filming my face and talking, or it's
Mm.
voiceover, or a combination of the two. And that last step is always like the hardest for me. And I've come to realize that part of the reason that I find that difficult is the camera I have. Uh, while I love some of what it does, um, I feel like it's really cumbersome to set up to do
Mm.
self filming. Like a lot of those creators that I see, like they just do stuff like they hold it and they stand near a mirror and they talk to it, and I could just not ever do that because my lens isn't good at focusing, and like I'm like I have to set everything precisely or else I'm like slightly out of focus. Like I've shot so many things multiple times because I was out of focus and I didn't realize it when I set it up, and like I think the worst thing is my autofocus is so sensitive. It's like constantly
Mm.
shifting, and I can't change the sensitivity level of it. So it's like I really love the look of that like shallow depth of focus where you're in focus but the background's kind of blurry. So I really always try and endeavor to do that when I'm doing my self filming, but I can't set the autofocus. So I have to like precisely measure it out and then like make sure I'm in focus. And then I can't really be spontaneous that way. So like it takes me a long time to set it up, and then I can't like move or like do anything. So all of that makes me feel like the filming is a chore.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to fix that one day. I would like to get a nicer camera, but I need to sell a lot more work before that happens.
There you go. Buy the work, ladies and gentlemen. Please let this guy evolve, because those are just growing pains. There are solutions for all those troubles for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just got an iPhone 12, which I'm really excited about, and that felt like a crazy like
Luxury.
shock. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But like, fortunately, I sold a few pieces recently, and I felt like I could do it.
It's an investment, in what you're doing too.
Oh, and absolutely. My old phone,
It's a tool.
my old phone was like not the sort of sensor in it that like prevented shaking.
Oh,
It basically
terrible.
it like always thought it was shaking, I guess. So everything I was filming was like this and wavy and stuff, and it was like, so I kept having to go like this. I'd go boom, boom, boom to like make it like calm down, and then it would work for a while. But like I had to do it every time, and I was like, sooner or later it's not gonna work anymore. So
The upgrade is noticeable, my friend. I can see the huge difference in quality with your outdoor shots. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you made that purchase, really. It's a gift to us all, so don't worry about the price tag on it. Hey, I'm wondering, the other day I was watching this reunited cast panel from one of those Comic Cons. It was the Weird Science cast, a John Hughes film. And I'm a huge John Hughes fan. I love all the films as well. And the first question the moderator asked was, okay, I watched the movie last night and I checked because I wasn't sure if it was going to be ultra creepy because it's from, the 80s. And thank goodness it wasn't creepy. And the panel was like, okay, great way to kind of open that up, like you put a little awkwardness in the room. But that is kind of a big question these days about like old films, from the 80s and so forth. Should they be welcomed back into the, pop culture today and so forth? For me, I don't know about you, but it doesn't bother me because I feel like it's from a different era and so on and so forth. So I don't judge. I'm not like that. But do you have any feelings about that? Like what we grew up on is completely not PC at all. Like,
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I guess, I mean, to put it best, and I have like an analogy for it too, like, which I'll start with. Like, I almost never like post images or video of me eating food or making food that's not vegetarian because I am ashamed that I'm not vegetarian. So like I just don't like putting that out in the world. And I feel the same way about that stuff. It's like I will allow myself to enjoy it, but I won't advocate for it or like share it with other people because I don't think it's worth that, like it's my personal enjoyment, and I'm not going to like go to bat for John Hughes. If someone says it's problematic, I'll be like, yeah, you're right, it is. And yeah, so, and I think it's probably a cop out, maybe I should be more vocal about like saying when something is wrong. But like, I don't know. It doesn't really come up that often either, like, but I do think that like the world learns, society learns, and you can't undo what's been done. You could only go forward and make things better. So if someone wants to remake a John Hughes film that is more PC, then maybe that's a good idea and they should try it. But
good luck remaking a John Hughes film.
The other thing that makes me think of is like, When I was younger, like people used to, when I first started getting tattoos, they would say something like, I don't know how you can get something that's gonna, last the rest of your life. How do you know when you're like 60 years old, you're still gonna like X thing or whatever? I'm like, well, the way I look at it is not like I will always like it, but I like it now, and I will never have not liked it now. So for me, it's more of a snapshot of a moment in time, not like, you know, this testament to my beliefs in the future. It
Mm-hmm.
may come out that it's both, but I'm not worried about that, like whether I still feel this strongly about certain things in the future. It's more about who I was in that moment. And movies are like that. They're a snapshot of the moment in time. So you can't necessarily place these contemporary viewpoints on something that happened in the past, because that person, they didn't have hindsight, that we
Mm-hmm.
do. Uh,
Absolutely. I think
yeah.
that could be, also formed in some great advice for people seeking to get tattoos is that you should definitely be embracing whatever the moment is, and more or less to simplify it, be in a good mood. Like don't get your tattoo with some future goal in mind of whatever that might mean for you later down the road. Like you should get it because you're just enjoying life or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have
Yeah.
any significance to what you're doing that day, but if you're in a good place, then yeah, you'll never dislike the tattoo because I myself have one, and I got it when I was 16. And
Mhm.
I certainly don't like the tattoo, so to speak. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I love it because it was such a great time in my life. It was this independent moment, and stretching out as a person that's making these types of decisions and so forth. Um,
Mhm.
so I love it, yeah. And with the movies, one thing that has changed, not just like the PC culture and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, but what I thought was interesting is Wyatt from Weird Science. The character Wyatt. He
Was he
said
the was he the brother? No.
he was
I,
the friend of Anthony Michael Hall,
okay. All
the
right.
two
Yeah.
boys that made the girl,
Yeah.
Kelly LeBrock. And he said that back then in the 80s, that he was a total nerd. So he was very shy on set, and there was the shower scene with Kelly LeBrock, and it was very awkward, but wow moment for him too. And he was very happy that they were so kind on the set to him because he wasn't really used to that. He was bullied. He was a nerd, and he made the
Yeah.
point of saying that in the 80s nerds were not welcomed. Nerds were, completely clotheslined and, tormented. But today it's different. Nerds are accepted. Nerd culture is actually like
Yeah.
a thing, that people embrace as cool. So that I hadn't even realized that, but it's so true that nerds have inherited the earth, kind of, so to speak. They're like the loudest
Well,
voices out there in a sense. Like the culturally oppressed or something like that. These are the voices now, and it's
yeah. Yeah.
what was ruling the school, like the jocks and this sort of like muscle and fear based kind of politic that we grew up in, is gone almost.
I mean, I mean that might be true, but honestly, how would I know? Like, I mean, you might be able to get some of that from pop culture, but like, I'm not a high school student or a junior high student. I don't know what they're really experiencing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, part of me assumes that there are a lot of similarities, and that simply by physical strength, jocks still have some sort of physical power over situations, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like how, like you're never going to get rid of that, right?
You're not, but
But
it almost seems like the curtain has been drawn, and everyone knows that those individuals are insecure. And
true,
with a
yeah,
well worded, stick of the verbal blade, like you defeat the jock. Whereas in the 80s, we didn't really know that, or 90s, we didn't really know that. We just knew that it was the oppressor. It's
Yeah.
you can kind of dodge it with a few words maybe here and there, but it feels like jocks that have any common sense will take a step back in this era because they're vulnerable like they were never vulnerable before, in a sense.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely hope that's the case. I mean, for sure, because uh, I think more than anything, it's nice when I see some television show or something now where kind of people are on equal footing, and that they're different in that they have different interests and stuff, but they're not like a caste system where
Mm-hmm.
if you're nerdy, you're a lesser person. And I like yeah. So I mean, I hope that's the case. I guess part of me just mistrusts that concept.
Yeah, perhaps easy too. Yeah, once bitten.
It's so different from what it was like for us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it also feels like the image of beauty is also shifting to accept all different types of beauty, which we always knew existed, but wasn't really portrayed commercially.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
that must have an impact on the younger ones too, to help them feel confident about who they are and so on and so forth. It's the world is definitely changing. There's a lot of growing pains though. I mean, I was like totally shocked by that whole Capitol situation. Like it didn't seem real. It seemed like a publicity stunt for like some weird extreme soda or something. Like I was just waiting for that guy with the horns to be like, "Yeah, crack into a whatever," because it just come what? It's like the
I
threads.
wasn't surprised at all. I mean, like, I think that I have been saying for almost 15 years that I think that eventually the United States is going to have a civil war. I mean, I just think it's inevitable because the disparity between wealth and poor people is getting bigger and bigger, and I just don't see how. I just don't see that the people in power are ever gonna share it unless it's taken. Um,
Mm,
and I mean, unfortunately, like, or perhaps fortunately, the people who did that were just not very smart. So they were never going to succeed in anything other than like cementing the election. Really, like all they did was
mm-hmm.
convince some people that it was really important to just make sure the election went through. That's
Yeah.
all it. Which is kind of the opposite of what their goal was. So it's like ironic and kind of funny, but eventually there's going to be people who are smart who are going to do things that really do destabilize our country, and um, and unless things change, it's just bound to happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just think that there is so much inequality that like um, it's inevitable. Anyway, yeah, that's I've been thinking that for like I mean I used to tell people that all the time. I was like, uh, I just I could see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the storm was coming. You could sense it.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I guess it's all inevitable and part of what we have to process and go through to achieve progress. Because when I look through the course of human history, I mean, there's been some huge differences in the way society operated. I mean, it's almost foolish to consider that we just reached the peak and it's never going to change. The next 10,000 million years will be exactly the way it is now. Like
yeah.
you should never be too comfortable.
And there's always like something that there's always an imbalance of power that that the people who are comfortable just don't want to acknowledge. And it just takes more and more pushing from the other people to say, you know, you may have things good for you, but for the rest of us, it's really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't understand that like you can make some small concessions and it'll be better for everyone, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
It's like when you
Um,
go to a restaurant with like a rich person and they don't buy you your food. Like, dude, come on.
and yeah, and they ask you to dinner,
You know what I mean?
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I mean, I I guess that's a pretty good. I just like you just get into these like weird things on Facebook of people who are friends of friends and stuff, and like this guy was saying something about how like his 401k made so much money last year, and like so he wants things to stay the same,
mm,
meaning he likes Trump, he wants Trump to stay president, and to me that is like the most selfish thing anyone could ever say. It's like things are good for me, so I want them to stay the same. And I'm completely blind to all
mm-hmm,
the terrible things happening in the United States. It's
mm-hmm.
like, and I don't know. It's so weird. It's so weird.
It is. It's
No,
so weird. It's so
I know
reality
I
TV
know
show.
I know you don't like talking about politics on these things, so we probably shouldn't talk about it more. But it's really hard to avoid at the same time, isn't it?
It is totally, because everything is kind of politicized. Even things that aren't political have that
Yeah.
kind of edge. And to me, like Facebook is definitely like I don't know the jump off for the Civil War because anytime I go on there, that's what it feels like. There's just like these sides duking it out the whole time, and I hear from a lot of people like they're just signing off on that and getting off that platform because I mean
Yeah.
outside there's far more rainbows to be found than on Facebook. There's far more
Yeah.
smiles and yeah, it's a wild time for sure. But yeah, to consider other people's feeling, that's why it was never a problem for me. Whatever makes people happy. I like people to smile. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
golly, to me that's my fuel. So yeah, I mean, things will move on and people will be unhappy, people will be happy. That's just the way it always has been. It's just that we get to hear so many new voices and so many different sides to the story. But it's life and it's always been that way, ups and
Hmm.
downs, valleys and peaks and so forth. But to me, we're always moving in the right direction, just slowly at times, faster at times. And
Hmm.
I just wish everyone can feel that comfort at least that you know even if it's really tough, things will get better. Things do get better, and you just have to believe and kind of you know at the same time embrace the fact that it's so uncomfortable and make that your like inspiration to a certain extent because when you were saying that you don't have friends there in Vietnam and um, I'm thinking not only are you distant from the social aspect, but it's also a completely foreign culture to you too. So you are definitely outside of your quote unquote comfort zone. And I'm
Hmm.
guessing that has maybe accelerated your contribution to the art world. Maybe that has a significant
Possibly.
impact on you.
I don't know. It's really hard to say. I mean, and maybe it's similar to like the concept of history. I won't really know how things have been influencing me until I get further enough away from it to like look at it dispassionately.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, like I remember I gave like a little artist talk when I was in Shanghai, and someone asked me in the audience like, "How has living in China affected your work?" And I was like, "Oh, it hasn't really affected it." But like, I don't really know if that's the truth, but it didn't feel like it was affecting me because I was just like making work, and I'm sure there were things that were sort of like unconsciously affecting my decision making, and like I mean, I tend to just think of like while I'm here in Vietnam, the things that are affecting me the most are just my lack of accessibility to certain materials and things like that. It's like I'm like more constricted in terms of what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And but one thing I've noticed is like often that that bit of pressure makes things a a little bit more focused in a lot of ways. Like
Hmm.
you have to be innovative with less. You sometimes get better results than if you just have all of this stuff, and it's almost sometimes overwhelming when you in the United States, if you walk into an art store, you're just like, oh my gosh, you could get anything you want. And here, when I go to an art store, it's like I'm like always looking for certain things and they don't have it, and I'm like, well, how am I gonna do this now?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
Same with cooking too. You go to a grocery store in the States, I mean, you can leave with whatever ingredients needed to make anything. I mean, it's
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
And that certainly isn't the case here. But yeah, so Germany definitely makes it challenging sometimes in those respects. You go to a store, whether it's an art store or a grocery store, but at the same time, there are things here that are a complete no-brainer, meaning that they should be exported to every corner of the planet. What about
yeah.
Vietnam? What is it that you've encountered there that you're like, oh my God, how is that not available in Chicago? Why don't they have this? What's going on?
I'm not sure. I'm sure there's something, but I can't think of it. I mean, I definitely can think of examples from China, but not off the top of my head here. Um, the main thing I'm thinking of in China was WeChat. Like that was just so amazing. Because on top of the social aspect of it, you could also it was like a pay portal. So basically, anywhere you went, anywhere, the smallest business accepted WeChat. So you just like hold up your phone and it had a little QR code and they'd scan it and you'd pay that way. But you could also transfer money to friends and stuff like that. So like all of my, like almost all of my art sales were like cashless. It was just like people would transfer money back and forth. So
Hmm.
that was like so convenient. And then you could pay your bills, you could buy phone or movie tickets, like anything was all in one app. It was like ridiculous. And it's one of the benefits of having like kind of a somewhat fascist government that controls things tightly. You know what I mean? Uh,
The
so
benefits of
it's
fascism.
unfortunate. Yeah, yeah. Uh, but um, that was a nice thing, and I think that people would really like. I mean, like I remember before I went to China, it's like you'd go to Starbucks and there was like 8 different ways you could pay using your phone. It's like why are there so many? It's
Hmm.
ridiculous. I want to like keep getting a new app to pay like every time I go to a different store. And like different stores would have different ones, and you're like, oh, I need to pay here. Which app do you take? And all that stuff. In China, there were two, but like everyone used one, and a few people used the other one. It was like, but like for sure.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I wonder what I could think of for. I mean, I think that the big thing is that almost everyone has a motorbike here instead of a car,
Mm.
and that's really a nice way to get around. Obviously, it's not. It's always warm here, so you can kind
Right.
of always use it. But like, I mean, I loved having a scooter when I lived in Chicago. I had one for like a year, but it got stolen, and I feel like that it made me never want to get one again because they're so easy to steal.
Mm.
And that's another thing in Vietnam. Like, people just don't steal things. It's like there's like no crime. We
Hmm.
like I never we leave our helmet just hanging on the bike all the time. I've never brought it in my house. It just hangs on the bike. No one
Wow.
steals helmets. Um, it's just like not something people do. There is a problem. People steal cell phones in Ho Chi Minh. Like if you're walking down the street and you're looking at your phone, a lot of times people will grab your phone.
Mm.
Um, it's never happened to us, but it happened to our friend not long ago, and he was just visiting Vietnam for like a week or two, and his phone got stolen. He was so upset.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I never hear about anything like any kind of crime here. So I don't know how you can export that though.
I don't think you can. What about street
No.
toughs? Is there like a street tough? Like, is there a look that you're like, that's the street tough? Because here in Germany, I don't know. I don't see street toughs. I don't pick up on that feeling of, oh wow, that person, let me avoid him. It doesn't have that presence
Yeah.
like it did in Florida or in Chicago, where you're like, oh, okay, they might be a little troublesome, like I
Yeah.
don't get that
No,
feeling.
there's not really a lot of that kind of stuff here, and there wasn't in China either. Uh, there 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 was definitely a lot of like arguments happening in China. Like people would yell at each other a lot, like on the train or whatever, and sometimes it would get into fistfights. But like, um, I've never felt unsafe anywhere in China or Vietnam. Like not a single time I could remember like walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just doesn't it doesn't seem like people think in those terms. Um, and I want to say it's at least partially because the the um, the population's mostly homogenous. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I think in the United States, because there are so many cultures mixed together, there's this sort of general distrust that happens between people of different cultures,
Mm.
and it's like harder for people to just like get along. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people in other countries don't understand that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think like, oh yeah, you know, there are these countries who are like, we have a great crime rate. It's because you're all white and you're
Mm-hmm.
all like the same social economic class. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
almost no poor people and stuff like
Like
that. So of course,
Scandinavian countries, right? Like
yeah,
the prisons that
yeah,
are
it's
like
like
resorts and stuff like that. Like, yeah,
yeah.
it's probably not so hard to maintain the prison
But you
population
know,
because they're
a,
not
a lot of those, a
sectioned
lot of
off
those
into
countries,
gangs based on race. It's not like that at
yeah,
all. You
yeah.
don't have, there's no
So,
fight club underground warden like pairing people together to battle to the death or something like that. Yeah,
which is really unfortunate that I think that that's a cause for problems.
it
But
is
I think that,
unfortunate. But the other thing too, though, I think is the United States, there's a big culture of smiling. Like people are just
yeah,
happy and everyone's like, "Woo!" and "How you doing? How were those cheese fries? Were they amazing? Did they blow your mind?" There's that attitude that's always present whether you're in Walgreens or wherever. Whereas
yeah,
and because of that in the States, if someone's angry, it doesn't have to be because they want to hurt somebody, but they're just angry for whatever reason. It looks dangerous. Where here in Germany,
yeah,
everybody looks angry all the time. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Everyone's walking around with this like very stoic kind of face. So if someone's pissed, it's like, okay, that's
It's
kind of
hard to
norm.
read.
It's normie.
Yeah,
Whereas in the States, like as soon as someone's like angry, you're like, oh damn.
yeah.
Oh.
I think we've talked about this before, but that's how it is in China too. Like, no one just randomly smiles at you on the street in China. Like, almost never. It like so. It was a little kind of depressing to be there sometimes because it's just like everyone frowned all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like even when you go to a restaurant or whatever, the service staff didn't smile. Um, like I could remember one of my favorite people in Shanghai was this woman who I don't know if she owned it or if she just worked there, but there was like this bagel place by my house, and she was like the only person in all of Shanghai, only Chinese person who consistently smiled and waved to me. So I like loved her,
Mm-hmm.
but like it was very strange. She'd be like, I'd be like, hi. And it would always be a shock because everyone else is just like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like part of that too is um, Mandarin is a super tonal language, and you can't change your tone if you're happy because it'll like how when you're trying to like be happier, your tone gets a little bit different, right? When you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't change the meaning of your words. But in China, if you
Oh.
change the tone, it actually changes the meaning of what you're saying. So you have to be very precise about your tone. And so if like even if you want to sound happy, it would actually change the meaning of your words. So like there, I think that's part of the reason why they don't it's harder for them to be emotive when they speak because they're sort of constrained by their language.
Hmm.
That's theory anyway. I'm not a linguist, but
No,
if I
it's
were, I
interesting
would
theory.
research. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about how language can impact, humor and so forth, but there definitely seems to be like uh, the hub of comedy in the United States. There's like, I mean, gazillion comedians there, stand-up comedians and so on. Whereas you don't really see that anywhere else on the planet. Maybe sometimes the
Well,
UK can compete a bit, but in
yeah,
Germany,
and
certainly there's no comedy culture really. Stand-up
well, I
comedy.
mean, again, yeah, it's I mean, like the German language is so severe sounding, like, and maybe it's hard to say something funny because it just comes off as like aggressive or something. At least
Mm,
when we'd be on the train and in China and like people, we'd like overhear conversations where we didn't understand it. I'm like, I just wish I would understand it. Are they mad at each other? Are they telling they love each other? Like it was just so hard to understand what they were saying, but it just sounded angry all the time.
mm-hmm.
And uh, it's just really interesting. But like you could not understand English, but you could get the emotion based on the way people were talking, I think,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very
Mm-hmm.
strange.
It is, and that was one of the things I missed most when I first moved to Germany. My German's much better now, but not being able to overhear conversations. I remember just sitting on the Strassenbahn, the street trains, and just being like, I wish I could hear what these people were saying, and I
Yeah.
missed it because in New York, obviously, conversations are flying around you and they're interesting. You're definitely eavesdropping. It's definitely part of
Yeah.
life in the city. And then you go home and you tell your friends, "Oh my God, I heard the blah blah blah," and there's like dedicated chat rooms for it, overheard NYC, blah blah blah, And now I'm starting to be able to pick up on that, of course. But still, yet my brain doesn't tune in. My brain like it's white
Oh
noise
yeah.
still. I have to make a focused effort to. I'm going to hear what they're going to say. I'm going to understand it. Otherwise, it's still just.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, for me, I find it kind of relaxing to be out and
It
not
is, right?
understand.
Yeah. It's like
It's like
you're.
so like I can't be concerned with this stuff, so I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like sometimes when you're in like and the craziest thing is it doesn't happen very much anymore. But like when you're traveling and like when I was in China and like I'd go somewhere and there were other English speakers around and they'd speak English, I'd be like, ugh, I can't not listen to them. I wish they weren't talking because like all I can do is hear them.
That's the funny
And then
thing, yeah.
when I would go home and visit the United States, it'd be the same. It'd be like I can understand too much. So I almost wish I couldn't because it's like some of that conversation's so banal and like or like there are terrible people who are like complaining at a restaurant about the service when it's not that bad or stuff like that, like entitled people whining, like
Mm-hmm.
that's the worst. um
I feel that
so
shame if I overhear English here in Germany and it's of a caliber that's like that. I feel like shame. I'm like, ah, man, don't do that.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
kind of ambassadors here. Like we have to, be on our best behavior, so to speak. We're guests to the country. Like
yeah,
drop those old habits of being nasty and so forth, and loud and demanding the attention of the whole city square and so on and so forth. But it's hard as an American to be quiet. Do you find I don't, it's hard, even when I'm being in my best behavior and respectful, my voice is so much louder than those around me, if I'm walking through the city having a conversation. And it's not deliberate, and I don't even think it's admirable or, dignified at all. It's just inherent to be loud.
I think that's more you than being American.
Is it me more?
I mean, I remember when we were younger, we'd be in a restaurant and you'd speak and the restaurant, and like, we'd be like, quiet, Joe. You can talk a little quiet. And like, the other people in the restaurant would be looking at us, and like, you'd be oblivious. You'd just be like talking, and there'd be some sensitive part of our conversation, but you'd say it really loud. But it's okay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I inherited it because my whole family are blabbermouths. We're all loudmouths. So it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. I can't shake it. So learn to live with it, people. It's with the best of intentions. And intentions matter. Um, do you come from a quiet background too? Was your family quiet? Uh-huh.
Very, yeah,
Hmm.
very Midwestern, um, like not communicative. Yeah, both audibly, but also like emotionally, not a very like intimate family. Yeah,
Hmm.
we kind of kept our own counsel or whatever.
And do
Yeah,
opposites attract? Is your husband coming from a different
he's
type
pretty
of?
gregarious. Yeah, he's pretty gregarious. A lot of people I've dated have been that way, but there were certain times where it was too much. And I would say Italians, like
Ah.
they were like kind of the opposite. Like I would be in the worst is when someone is quick to arguments, but also quick to just shut it off. Like I couldn't function in those kinds of dynamics where like they would get really emotional and angry like over little things, but then like just forget about it like 5 minutes later, and I'd be like I couldn't sleep for 8 hours because I was like, what happened. Um, and it took a while for me to understand that that was what was happening, right? Because it's just they communicate different. That's how they grew up. Like they'd have huge arguments with their family, and then they'd have dinner and like forget anything happened. And like to me, that's like insane. But that's because my family never argued about anything. It would
Mm-hmm.
just be like everything's quiet.
Does that mean
But
that you don't take the bait if somebody's arguing with you? You don't take the bait. You
almost
don't.
I almost never get in arguments. Like it's just not something that interests me. If someone like wants to be right, I'll just let them be right,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter. And so far that works with us. Hopefully that stay like every once in a while he gets frustrated because he feels like I don't communicate enough. So I try to be communicative. But at the same time, it's just like my nature. It's how I grew up. It's just like for me, when something's really important, I will talk about it. But in my mind, nothing is that important. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just want things to be smooth and calm and stuff. Um, so yeah.
I kind of feel like you've always been that way. I mean, when I think back to high school, you definitely had that calm vibe, even in the storm, like when it was raining down with trouble. You kind of seemed unaffected, like you barely could put even like a micro frown. It was just like, you're always
Yeah.
mm, okay,
People have said that about me for a long time, and it was like I would attract people who were not like that because
mm,
they were just attracted to that. And sometimes I like that, but a lot of times I'd be like, um, it would be frustrating because I'd be like, listen, the reason I'm like that is because that's how I like things to be,
right,
and you're like like I definitely had a number of relationships with just like friends in over the years where like they would be attracted to that about me, but then they would get frustrated and angry with me because I wasn't demonstrative enough in their direction.
mm,
And like I'd be like, I'm sorry, that's just how I am. Or like, I remember I just got in this huge fight with someone who was a very close friend because like it was just over like there was a big group of us going on a trip. This was when I was in college. I was like on the board of directors for our like gay like networking university group, right? And so I was like on the leadership, and there was another guy who I was friends with who was also part of the leadership. There were all these younger members who were like, younger people at the school, and we were going on a trip, all of us together, and like some of them were like underage, and so there were events happening for younger people and then like a lot of the older people were going out to bars, right?
Mhm.
So I said I'm going to go hang out with the younger people so that they have like someone a little older to sort of like be around and like make sure everything's going okay, right? And my friend was like, why don't you come out with us? I'm like, well, I just think I told them I'd go with them, and we could go out anytime we want at home. I just promised them, and he got so mad at me because I like chose these other people. He's like, but you're my best friend, and I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, but it's just like a night, don't worry about it. And it was just like this huge thing, and I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like this is just like one night going out. But I think it was probably, in retrospect, it was building. It was building where, someone was putting all this energy into me, and I was only returning this like little baseline fraction
Mm.
of energy because that's what I give out usually. That's like
Mm-hmm.
that's how I give it out, regardless of what I'm feeling internally. It always feels like this even keel.
Yeah.
Um, and people misunderstand that, and they think that it's like something else, that it's like that it's not good enough or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a problem I've had my whole life.
That's funny.
But
I never really thought about that. But yeah, even in times of joy, not just, complexity and trouble, you're not that explicit with your joy. You might get like one
no,
little howl out of you, like, oh, like that's it. But
yeah,
I don't remember you
yeah,
ever rolling on the floor or any of that.
yeah. I mean, like it's really weird because like whenever I tell my husband really good news, he's like, "Why don't you sound happy about that?" I'm like, "I am happy. I just that's just how I talk about things. But I also I think there's a bit of cynicism in me. Like whenever I like, I'm like, oh, I sold this piece today. But in the back of my mind, there are so many things that could go wrong from the point of sale that like I'm not really excited about it until it's over. And by the time it's over, it's like too late, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because like in
Mm-hmm.
the process of the sale, I have to like box it and ship it out, and then it has to make it overseas, and then they have to open it, and then they have to like it. Like so all those things need to happen before I'm really like, oh yeah, I sold this piece. Because if
Mm-hmm.
any of those things go wrong, then I have to like refund money or like worry about it or whatever. And it's like so like a lot of times that's what is in the back of my mind whenever I have any good news. It's like something can go wrong, so I'm
That's
not that
funny.
happy about it.
That's funny. Are you like the glass half empty guy, or I would think of you as an optimist, like,
To me, I'm just a realist. I think I used to be an optimist, and I realized that like things can go wrong, and
mm-hmm.
it's better to the way I've always felt about most things in life is that if you don't have expectations, you can't have them. Just you can't be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is good, really. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't expect things to be good and they are, that's great. If you don't expect them to be good and they're bad, you're not really, you're not
Mm-hmm.
disappointed because
Mm-hmm.
you didn't worry about it in the first place. And, I feel like so many people get their like, have expectations from things. And that's when you're most likely to be disappointed and like hurt emotionally. And I just like, I find that to be, and I think it's just a logic thing too. Like I've always like, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, who's to say where like logic ends and emotion begins? I mean, you have to watch like all the different Star Treks to think about that, right? Like Spock versus Kirk, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. I mean,
Showing your nerd
it's hard.
flag there for a second.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's really interesting because it's like it's true. It's like I don't know if like logic is separate from emotion, or if it's um, or if it's the absence of it. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
think you could be emotional and logical, but like you kind of have to be dispassionate about something to really look at it logically. And like that, like I say, it's like you know, if I don't have an expectation for something and it goes wrong, I'm not going to be upset about it because I like it doesn't make any sense to be upset about it, really, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's just going to make you feel bad. I don't want to feel bad, so I'll just be like, well, a bad thing happened, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I
No,
just know
I
that
feel you. You're kind of getting into that whole enjoy the journey situation instead of like, focusing on the goal or whatever it might be. Just be there, be present, and don't get carried away. And it kind of seems like as you're detailing that, I see you basically having been that person since I've met you. So I guess if I were to ask you, what is it you would tell your high school self if you could go back in time and whisper something in your ear? And I mean, is there anything that you would say, or you just be like, "Yeah, kiddo, you're doing all right"? I mean, like anything?
I mean, number one, I don't know that I would listen to myself, you know. I don't know that people are really capable of that. I think a lot of the lessons you learn, they need to be learned through
Mm,
experience. You know, like you can't really tell someone to change their ways because they, you know, there are some
yeah,
people who are
yeah.
capable of learning like a lesson through a story or something, but for me, I don't know. I feel like it has to be you have to like really experience something to know that it's um, valuable or whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
I wish I could go back and tell myself to just plan better. I mean, I feel like so much of my life was just floating and letting things happen. Um, it's made my present great always, you know, like I feel like I'm always like in a good mood because I'm able to live in the moment. But, you know, eventually I'm going to catch up with the future and things are not going to be the way that they should be.
Mm.
You know, I should be saving more money. I should be, um, you know, everything revolving around that. I'll just say I
Hmm.
should probably have a bigger career right now, all that stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I'm here and I don't know how to live life any differently. Um, but yeah, I think that like, you know, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a writer. That was like the big thing. And I didn't really have backup plans or like think about it too much in terms of like how to make that happen. And
Hmm.
so it just kind of like then I wanted to then I was in a band and I was playing music. I never really thought I was going to be like living off of being in a band, but it did occupy a lot of my time for a long time. And then I started making art, and I make some money off of art, but I'm not like, you know, I I should be making more money. I'll just say that.
Sure. I mean, definitely there's, an ideal version of everyone's life, but in a sense, it's almost like an impossibility because what you said earlier about sometimes you encountering people that might be your age or slightly older, but they seem older. They just, it's like they're old, like it's not uh, compatible. And I feel like those people are the ones who did a lot of that focusing on my 401k, my retirement. I have to make sure I'm secure. Where's my life insurance? Do I have everything insured and all that? And too much of that, I think, deprives you of that existentialist joy where you're just enjoying life. You're not
Yeah.
even thinking about it, about the end or how are you going to survive when you're 70? Like, if you don't have any savings, like, like that to me is such a depressing thought. I can't engage in it too much, because I don't have any savings. I don't have any plan. You know what I mean? I just don't. But I always have that thought in the corner of my head is that there'll be somebody I can like, find a little cup of coffee with or something, right? Like, I don't think I'm
Yeah,
the kind of person that's going to be completely without any sort of comfort in my older
yeah.
years. I mean, I'll just go knock on the door of every single senior home and say, hey, let me serve the milk, let me clean the floor, and I'll be happy with that. Whatever. I'll collect bottles or whatever. I'll recycle cans. I don't know. It won't be a problem because I don't think of myself as better than that. I'll clean the toilets, whatever. I'll find a way and it'll be okay. Because what the
Mhm.
hell good is it to be 70 plus and alone because you weren't able to form those feelings, those excitable feelings with people throughout
Mhm.
your timeline. Instead, you're just, oh, everything's perfect. I'm 70 and I have, like that doesn't seem like the promised land either. So I don't know. There's
Yeah,
got
I
to,
mean, I think ultimately there are priorities, right? And what are your priorities? And you can't. I think there are probably some people that have it all, like that somehow have money and good relationships and security and all that stuff. But I think those are the luckiest people. But I do
mm,
think that like some people sacrifice their relationships so they can work, and there are people who sacrifice their happiness so they can work, and they go through. I think my father was like that. I think he really did not like his life. He never
mm,
really ever seemed happy to me, but he was stable, right? But
mm-hmm.
like, what good that did that give him? And unfortunately, he died very young. I mean, he died in his early 50s.
Mm,
So part of me thinks, well, I might not even have to worry about it. Like it's just like if it's anything like, and his father died really young too.
mm-hmm.
So I'm healthier than them. I like my dad smoked and was an alcoholic, and so was his father. So I'm hoping that I'll last at least 10 more years because I'm not a heavy drinker smoker. We'll see.
Gosh, I should hope so, Brian. I mean, my comfort when it comes to death is that you never know you're dead. So big deal.
Yeah,
Really big deal. To me, the true victim there are the people you leave behind. I mean,
absolutely.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's like really,
yeah,
if anything, just make sure you say I love you enough. Make sure you give enough hugs, and everything's fine. You did well. You're
yeah,
gone. You're sleeping
yeah.
off to the next party.
Like I do. I worry about the burden of my physicalness to my husband. That's
Right.
my biggest. Like I'm like living here. If I died, I would feel so bad for him having to handle that. Like
Mm.
he'd probably feel like obligated to send my body to the United States and like get all my belongings together and give them to my family and all that stuff. And that's like terrible. Like
Mm.
I don't wish that on him. You know, it's
Yeah, of
really
course not. Yeah.
upsetting to think about. I'm really hoping we're not abroad when that time comes for either of us. I hope we're living back in the United States because I, I think it'll be easier.
I guess it would be. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You don't want that
Um,
shipping like the Transylvania, like on a horse carriage. No, we don't want any of that. No, I think it's great, man. I think, in the words of Paul Mooney, he once said that, don't get it twisted. Success can only be measured in physical and mental health. That's success. And if you have that, you're a success. And as far as we have that, as long as we have that, I should say, then hey, man, top of the world, ma. Look at me, I made it. So, and I
yeah.
think I think we're both lucky to have that. As long as you can sing and dance, you're good. And
Mhm.
I whatever I can do to help those who can't sing and dance, I will, because definitely that's a significant component in feeling well and feeling good and so forth. And yeah, man, you were one of the best dancers. You definitely, I don't know about your singing voice, but I'm sure
I
your
can't sing at
husband
all.
has heard it.
No, I don't sing at all. I'm a terrible singer. When I was in bands, I was the screamer. I was always in like punk bands, so like I would be the one that yelled. Uh,
Mm.
I I could barely hold a tune. I used to do karaoke, and there were like a couple songs I could do. For whatever reason, James, the band,
Yeah.
yeah, I could do "Laid," which is a really hard song, but I could do that. I don't know if I
Really?
could do it. Yeah,
That's a very unique voice.
yeah. I could do the falsetto and stuff. In general, his like range, I can hit most of those songs. But I don't know how that's possible because I can sing almost no other music.
I mean, I would have to live with a deep regret if I didn't at least ask you to sing a little bit of that as we close out this episode.